Well, g'day everyone. Today I thought that I'd take you through some of the issues, and some of them have been quite big if you are transitioning over to the M1 Max. Because some of them are huge for me, and it may want to make you wait before you actually do that and stay with your Intel Max, or do what I'm doing, which is I've got a machine next to me, which is my Mac Pro, and I'm still using that for certain things due to the fact that certain things just don't work. So I'll talk to you all about that. And I wanted to talk about one of the really big issues if you format your drive. Now, what happened was when I got my Mac originally, I started to install things on there and I just had a few problems. So I thought, look, I'm going to start from scratch. I'm going to reformat the drive and load the operating system from scratch like I've done with all my other Macs. And usually you just boot the Mac up by holding a couple of keys and then you can reinstall the operating system. But that does not work with this new Mac. In fact, if you format the drive, and this is where I went into a problem, if you format the drive, it basically bricks it. And you have huge issues if you do that. Now, luckily, I did find a solution, and I'm going to show you what that solution is before we go on to some other things. And I'll leave this link down below in case if you do have this problem. Now, what you had to do, you had to use this thing called Apple Configurator. And it's saying when reinstalling, you may get a message that an error occurred while preparing the update. And this is what happened with me. It just wouldn't update at all. And the thing is, what you need to do is you need to use two computers, and you've got to use this thing called Apple Configurator. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but what you need to do is connect up your I've got the Mac Mini. You've got to connect that up to the other computer. And you use a USB-C cable or a USB-A to USB-C cable to connect the two computers together. Then you run Apple Configurator and you join the two computers together. Well, then you have to use Apple Configurator to go through these steps, and it basically reformats and builds up your system completely from scratch. So it makes it up like it was when it was factory reinstalled, because it reinstalls all of these partitions and everything on it. So it's a really big process that you've got to go through. I thought initially I would have to take this back to Apple because I thought that it was destroyed. But this did work after I went through this whole process, and it worked fantastic. And it did bring the Mac back up to its original state. You still have to reinstall everything, but at least it worked, and then it was like a brand new state of that. So I'll leave that down below in case if anyone does ever do that. But my recommendation really is to definitely don't format your drives unless you want to go through this whole system of using this Apple Mac configurator and hooking it up to two machines. So if you didn't have two machines, basically you'd be screwed. So that's something that you could look at too. Now, I also wanted to talk to you about hardware issues, and this is where I thought I'd talk to you about what has worked and what hasn't worked for me, and it has been a real issue for me. One of the real big problems was that when I first started to install the operating system, like when you first turn the computer on, it wouldn't work with the Bluetooth keyboards that I had and the Bluetooth mouse. So luckily I had a wired keyboard and a wired mouse. As soon as I put that on, I could go through the installation. Now, I'm not sure if that's affected everyone, but it certainly affected me. So if I didn't have the wired keyboard or the wired mouse, I wouldn't have been able to go with the installation at all, and that would have been a real issue. So lucky I had that. So just keep that in mind as well. It could be a problem. Like I said, I'm not sure if everyone has that problem. Well, once I got the operating system installed, well, then it was running beautifully. I could connect my mouse, I could connect the keyboard wirelessly then, and then I could take off the wired keyboard and the wired mouse, and everything worked fine. I am using a Logitech mouse here. This is the MX Master 3, and I'm using the Apple wireless keyboard as well, and even the Apple trackpad as well, and they're all connecting without a problem. Now, when I say connecting without a problem, I have had to talk about Bluetooth issues. I have had Bluetooth issues only with my keyboard for some reason. After using it for a long period of time, the keyboard, it still functions, but it does weird things, like I'll be typing and then the actual cursor doesn't work, or the characters don't show up, or I can't press backspace, and then I have to sort of disconnect it and then reconnect it. So I am having Bluetooth issues with that. The mouse has never been an issue, so I've never had a problem with the mouse at all, but I am having a problem with the Apple, which is strange because you think I'd have problems with the mouse and not an Apple keyboard. So there are problems there, and I've heard a lot of people having Bluetooth issues, so I'm hoping with an update that comes out they can fix that. The next hardware problem that I had was I run two Promise RAID systems. Now they're high-end systems with basically 12 gigabytes on each drive in 4 separate bays. I'm running that and it won't connect. The drivers to this aren't written for this system, and basically they're not telling anyone when they're going to have those drivers available. So at the moment, I can't use my RAID system, which is what I use for my whole Lightroom catalog and things like that. So I've got that huge storage sitting there that I can't use. Now, that's why I'm still using my Mac Pro, and I'm using that to be doing my Photoshop editing and due to Lightroom because I need those drives to be there and available. So I'm not sure if they're even ever going to be available. So that's a real worry for me. And in fact, I've just bought another 2 terabyte T7 SSD drive that will probably get me by for the time being, and then I may have to try and think of another solution down the track. But at the moment, I've got these huge devices that have cost me a fortune that I can't use. So that is a real issue if you're a high-end user like me, as a professional photographer and videographer, that I can't access those drives. And like I said, I've got no idea when they'll be I'll be able to access them at all. The other one too is Universal Audio. I do use the Apollo Twin. And there's no drivers available for that yet either, and they're not saying when that will even be available at this stage at all. So that is a real problem as well for me. I do use a Rode Procaster or Rodecaster Pro for my other audio, so that's fine. But if I'm doing music production, because I actually play music and things like that, I can't connect with that through this new machine, so I have to use my old machine for that. In fact, I don't even think it's got Mac OS Big Sur compatibility yet, but I'll have to try that on my other computer to make sure it works, but it definitely will not work on the Mac Mini. Other hardware, there's a way you can check, or other software, there's a way that you can check what software is available. So the software is a free download, and I'll show you where it is. It's actually this program here, which is, you go to the iMazing site, and it's the third app down actually. It's this one here called Silican. So this is the one that you can download, and I'll show you what the app looks like when you open it. You just have to open it up, and then it scans your computer for applications. And then it will tell you on this what is a universal app. So that means it's universal to this, which means it will run native. Anything else like this is not running native, and so they're the ones that hopefully will be upgraded in, well, sometime along the line. Like I know Adobe, for instance, is saying March that they're going to upgrade these. They will all work very, very well, I've found, without being native, but obviously native apps are going to run quicker. So you can scroll down and then you can see which apps are available as universal apps, and you can see there's quite a few now. Some are getting updated all the time, but like I said, there's also a lot that aren't universal as well. So that's one way that you can check, looking for apps that are on your computer to see if they are native or they're going to have to run with Rosetta. And like I said, Rosetta apps at the moment tend to be really quite good. Like I haven't seen really performance issues at all, but I'm expecting when they, say for instance, when they turn Photoshop to native or Lightroom to native, I am expecting a reasonably decent improvement. So that's one good thing that will happen over time. So that's one great thing. So that's how you can check what they're native. Now, I'm just looking at a list here because I've written a few things down to make sure that I've got everything done. Now, what about apps? Final Cut has some issues. Now, I can use it, and I am actually using it, but I can't use a lot of plugins and things like that, which one of them particularly is really important to me. So I'll show you. When I open Final Cut up, it will actually tell me that these plugins need to be updated. So these are all the ones in here that will not work on Apple Silicon at all. Now, they do work on Big Sur because I've got that on my other computer and they are working, but they're not working on Apple Silicon at all. So none of these will work. In fact, if I try and add them into Final Cut, it just gives me a big question mark and it just doesn't work. Now, the big one for me is Color Finale. I use that all the time. For my color corrections, adding LUTs and things like that. Well, that's not working. I have contacted them and they've said they are updating it, hopefully sometime around Christmas or early in the new year. I've noticed that these other ones from VFX also, and I do use these a lot as well, also aren't working, but they have been updating them and it's automatic. They tell you that there's a new version available. So I've noticed they are updating as well. So that is a thing you've got to consider. The other big one too that doesn't work, and it doesn't even show in here, I don't think. Oh, yes, it does, is noise. The Neat Video noise reduction also doesn't work. So if you use that all the time to get rid of your noise in Final Cut, it won't work in this version of the Apple Silicon. So that's something you may want to consider as well. So there are a few really big issues if you're using Final Cut. Now, what about Photoshop? Well, Photoshop, I've had some issues. Nick, which I use all the time, does not run. I've had to download and pay for the new version of that. And then that works. So that did work. Neat Video, OM1 as well. I did use a creative suite of plugins. They didn't work either. They're now termed as legacy programs. They do still work on Big Sur because I've got these all working on my Mac Pro, but they won't work on the Apple Silicon. And they're ones that I do use all the time. So I've had to upgrade the Nick plugin suite and also the OM1 creative suite. I've had to download the latest versions of that. And there's a couple of other plugins that I can't remember offhand that aren't working at this stage either, but hopefully it was RadLab, I think, one of theirs. I think it's called Sugar Pixel. Yeah, that's what it was. It was Sugar Pixel. Had some issues as well. So you've really got to be careful if your workflow demands that these programs are going to work. And if you haven't got a second machine like I have got, and you are definitely, say, doing things in Final Cut and you need those type of plugins, or if you're using Photoshop and you need those type of plugins, it might be better to wait till the new year before you move over. I think that could be the case because, like I said, I'm still having to use Lightroom on my other machine due to the fact that I've got that RAID system installed on there. And if you're a music creator and you're using Apollo Twins, Universal Audio, stuff like that, you're also going to be in big trouble. So, you know, I just wanted to sort of mention that it's not all rosy. Look, I'm loving it. I really am loving it. And I can't wait for all of these apps to start working, and they will eventually. It's just that I'm an early adopter and you have to expect these things to take time. And I was aware of that when I upgraded to this anyway. If you have any questions, please leave them down below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And apart from that, guys, I'll see you all in the next video. Bye for now.